We're going, and we are on now,
We're
and
live.
we are live. And this will all get edited. I'll like cut the beginning of this so that no one is subject to this little bit of talking. But I'm gonna go
Where
ahead
can
and
I
announce
find
on
the
Twitter that we're live,
nice?
and I'll send you guys links.
Ah, perfect. Because there's all my Italian family. Where's the link? Where's the link? We cannot find it.
That's funny.
Obviously, you're shouting in Italian, not with a fake Italian accent.
Yeah.
Am I seeing?
All right. I am going to. I'll text you that one.
Here we go.
Cool. The one watching now is me, so there isn't anyone on yet. So let's throw out a tweet and then let me switch out this thumbnail for Stewart so it shows him instead.
I just sent it to my mom and said, "Mandalo a tutti," which means send it to everyone. I don't know how. I have no idea how she will interpret that, but we're about to find out. If you look at the analysis of the views afterwards and you see there's like 50 people from Italy, that will be.
Desktop. Okay.
Let me send this.
What part of Italy are you from?
I am from, do you know, I always make the same exact sentence when I say, basically just the north, very, very close to Austria. It's called Trento.
Okay.
It's not a very common city. It's like a gem in the Alps, we say.
Okay.
So mountain. So I thought when I came to Canada, I thought, oh, I can handle the cold, no problem, no problem. And then I ended up in Saskatchewan. So
Yeah, that's different.
you can honestly, and I'm not joking. When I first arrived in Saskatchewan, I had kind of like a real physical reaction to the shock because I was used to like I've been to plains, right, to places where it's flat. I've been there before, but there's always like houses and trees and like maybe a building. In Italy, like you just go past, but it doesn't just look like a line. So I got out of the airport and we're in the car, and I was like, "Is this like hallucination?" It was so flat, and then it wasn't pleasant when I first arrived because it was a September. And then when the cold started, I thought this is impossible. How can it get this cold? But I will tell you something, Stuart. I hate the UK cold more than the Canada cold because here it is evil. Because here it's very humid, so it's like you feel it in your bones. Like in Canada, it kind of became fun at some point. Like me and my friends, we would go out of the dorms with like wet hair that it would all freeze, in the winter, and then we'd like bend it into shapes and stuff. So it was fun. But here you can't do that, and it's just so cold. It but it's
Well,
not that bad. Oh, sorry.
Vancouver is probably more like the UK cold. I mean, we don't get the cold here in Vancouver at all,
Nice.
and we're in
The
the
hair.
mountains, so it's not flat. So it's very different. I mean, Canada is a big country, right? So different
Mhm.
climate zones, just like the US.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. You know what? Every time I was in Saskatchewan, I always thought of Vancouver as like the paradise. Like,
yeah.
oh,
Well, it is.
if I was like, if I stay in Canada, I'm gonna go to Vancouver. And one time, me and my friend, we were, oh no, I'm not gonna continue this story in case my mom is listening. But I'll very briefly say that at one point we were tempted to book concert tickets to Vancouver and like sneak past, like sneak from where we were in Saskatchewan to go on our own to Vancouver to this concert. But it never happened. We never went. So as of today, I have never been to Vancouver, but hopefully I will
Oh,
soon.
well, that's your story now, right?
Yeah.
For your mother.
Yes, because I saw there's 5 viewers now, and I'm like, I've never been to Vancouver. I've never. I bet it's beautiful.
All right. All right. Okay. We are up and running. We'll give a little people a few more minutes so we can this chat, and then we'll
How was
get it
your
going.
How was your weekend, everyone? I didn't even ask. I just jumped on.
Every day's a weekend for me.
Must be nice.
Nice. My dream.
Except I don't ski on weekends because there's too many people on the mountain, so
Oh, you
saves
are
that for midweek.
nice. Oh my gosh, it must be amazing to ski in British Columbia. It's one of my dreams. Nice. Yeah. Where do you go to ski?
Oh, I live about 10 minutes from the tram for the local mountain, so I have a pass
Nice.
there. I used to own a place up at Whistler, so I'd ski there all the time. But
the dream. The dream. Do you ever go like off piste, or is there much of an off piste area there, or is it mostly like really nice? How do you call it in English? Yeah, off piste.
You mean beyond the boundaries? You mean?
Yes, yeah. When you
into the bowl. Well, Whistler and more recently, we had a home up in the Okanagan, which is the sort of the wine country, but there's Big White Mountain, and they're so wide open, so much terrain.
Nice.
You don't have to really worry about going beyond. So, I tend there. Avalanches are pretty serious things, right? So I don't want to get caught in one.
Smart. That's why I don't go out of the borders anymore. Because I've never been paranoid, but then my dad told me a story that, once again, my mom is listening, so I will not tell this story. But it scared me off. Yeah, that's my mom, Lia. Ciao. She said in Italian, meno male, which means like, I'd hope not. So I assumed that was about that I've never been to.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad told me a story so scary about avalanches and stuff that I said, you know what, I'm not risking it ever. Never, ever. So then I don't know if it was a real story, because my dad sometimes has the habit of making a bit of, how do you say, like telling a story very, very colorfully. I don't know how to explain it, like adding details of questionable truth, right? Let's say
embellishing.
There we go. So when I was a child, I was convinced that he invented tiramisu. I was convinced. So when people would like, oh, I love tiramisu, I'd be like, my dad is the inventor of tiramisu. I was convinced. And then one day I told him that, and he was laughing. He's like, no, I just, I made it fashionable in my restaurant back in the day. And I was like, but you said you invented it. It was so heartbreaking to find out. Like, I thought my personality was the daughter of the inventor of tiramisu, and instead.
So the key of the story, a key item in the story, is the fact that you kind of like ignored the fact that your dad's a chef and didn't say that with the lead.
Well, he's
yeah,
he's not like
he's not. I hear
he's
stuttering.
not fully. The thing is, like, he's not a chef, but I thought it was just like a genius idea of him. He had a club in the 80s, which was until the 2000s, where they basically, him and his brothers, it was like a restaurant and like just a club where they played awesome music and stuff. And he would like do everything. He would DJ, but he would also, like, I don't know, I just assumed that, he just one day he decided to invent the tiramisu in his club. But he was not a chef or anything. I never questioned it. I was like, yeah, it's him.
Okay. Your mom made another Italian comment, just so you know.
Which is hello to you.
Oh, okay. Hello. And I am sitting in the dark when I should not be. So I will change that.
Let there be light.
For real. Yeah. I gotta let the light, let the lights turn them on, and everyone has to be punished with the face. So I guess we should get started. And I will start this wonderful thing off with let's go.
We don't have a little jingle yet. Maybe I can sing.
No, we don't. We do. I just haven't made it. I haven't turned one on here, but hey, I have sound effects, so I could always, do something like this. Or no. Let's see what else I got going on over here. There we go. I think you hear that?
That's
I don't know
cute.
what the heck that is, but yeah. Yeah, so that sounds like your 80s club music going on right there.
This is the
Sorry.
new jingle.
All right. So I guess
There we go.
we should do the important stuff, which is actually introduce the show and get started. So welcome to the Swift Ascent podcast, your weekly getaway to the fascinating world of iOS development and the Swift programming language. I'm your host, Clayton, here with Anna Beltrami, and I know I messed that name up because she's probably looking at me weird and I can't see her camera, so that's okay. And as we look to dive into an array of topics catering to developers of all levels, from inspiring junior devs to seasoned professionals, this podcast is meant for you to discover insights on learning, self-improvement, and mentoring within the iOS community. So whether you're just starting out your journey whether you're starting out your journey or you're already a pro, the Swift Ascent podcast is something in store for you. So turn in every other week on YouTube and YouTube Live or any of the podcast streaming apps, and you can be a part of the discussion and gain fresh ideas and fuel your growth. And now, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our distinguished guest for today's show, Stewart Lynch. So that's where I should have
Welcome,
the where I should have the clapping, but instead it's
gonna-
more like crickets. It's like crickets right now because Craig doesn't have the applause ready. So yeah, let's see. I know
You can put the jingle again. That the very experimental music jingle when we switch over.
There we go.
There we go.
It's out. And without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our distinguished guest of our show today,
Yes,
Stewart
Stewart, welcome.
Lynch.
This is good. Welcome, Stewart. Actually,
Wow.
I don't think I've ever had an introduction like that. So
I'm gonna,
yeah.
there we go. I tell you what, Craig, that you did that really well. I kind of interjected half point. I don't know what I was doing. Like I was trying to collaborate. However, you rocked that introduction. But welcome officially, Stewart. Even though we've been chatting about Tim Hortons for a while earlier, but now officially, the serious welcome. So welcome to our podcast.
Thank you.
So let's do a little introduction on Stewart. If you're not familiar, Stewart is a renowned iOS and Swift developer. He's based in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, with over 3 decades of experience in education and tech. Stewart has made significant impacts in both public and the private sectors. An active participant in the Swift community. So if you're here and you don't know him, yeah, you should know him. So
Go check him out.
Stewart's passion for sharing knowledge and resources has made him a valuable contributor to the world of the iOS development community. So, we're gonna talk to Stewart today about his journey starting with iOS, and then we're gonna also get some of his feedback and recommendations on things today and how he learns. So we're gonna just dive into everything. So again, welcome, Stewart. It's really a pleasure to have you on. This is the first time I've been able to actually talk to you, and hopefully you are planning to go to WWDC in the event. If you're not, but if you do go, I definitely have a ticket, and I plan to at least hopefully see you in person, shake your hand, maybe get you dinner or whatever. But welcome.
Thank you very much for having me here.
No problem.
And it's actually been,
it's our pleasure.
It's been 4 decades now, not 3 in education and tech. So,
well,
nice.
Yeah.
I think it's because we went to the website. So
we did. We taken the bio off the website.
I better update that.
4 decades. So
Wow.
so speaking of WWDC really quick, since that was announced last week, what are your plans? Are you planning to go if you get a ticket or not a ticket? What is your status?
if I get a ticket, I'll definitely go. So I've applied. I'm still sitting on the fence as to whether or not it's expensive to go down. So that's always a limiting factor, right? And then the other thing is, how many days do you go for? And I mean, I'd love to go down there for the full week. I'm just not sure my wife would like that, or my dog.
So for me, I'm flying from Florida. So if I come to the West Coast, I'm staying a while. And I have family in Los Angeles. I have family in North California too. So my plan is to come that Friday, and then I won't leave California until the 20th or the 19th. So part of it's going to be in Northern, and then I think I'm going to take a train from San Francisco, because I haven't done the train ride yet, from San Francisco to Los Angeles, and then spend a week and a half down there and go to Big Bear and hang out with friends and stuff. And but I will be there the entire week up until Saturday. So from Friday to the 2nd and until like Saturday. So I'll be there the entire week if you do show up. And I know when I asked Paul, he said he's coming in a few days before me, just so he can get acclimated to time. So
right.
I know there's a few people that are coming in early. So if you do come and you do stay, if you do come early, just let me know. And I know there'll probably be some gatherings to get dinner and stuff.
Yeah, I said last year that I would try and get down. So there's a good chance that I'll still be going.
Awesome. Yes.
Nice. I'm debating it as well. I haven't decided yet, because I say like, like I'm already going to New York, NY Swifty in 2 weeks. So close in 2 weeks. So I'm like, it's kind of a far trip from the UK to come all the way to America, but I do really like California. And now that my personality of the month is a climber, maybe I can go to Yosemite. So my mind is racing with the possibilities of what I can do. But no, I think maybe I'll apply and then see what happens. Maybe I'll see you folks there.
Yeah, I'm going regardless.
You better apply soon.
Yeah, it's true. Actually, let me write it down.
Yeah, they're going to announce by the end of the week, so that's good.
Yeah, they may have closed it today. May be the last day, so you might not want to forget.
I will definitely not forget. Don't worry.
You've piqued my interest in the Yosemite. I haven't actually been, so I might try to plan. Usually, my thing is I love to cook, so when I go to somewhere, I like to take cooking classes or find a cooking class. So I'm probably gonna try and find like a sushi one, and then I maybe try to plan something at Yosemite. Now that you keep bringing it up, so because we talked about it before, so I think I'm gonna look into that.
Stewart, what are your hobbies? Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I just interrupted.
No, you're good. You're good. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask, kind of like icebreaker. What are your hobbies besides skiing? That we have that in common. We also in common we're wearing the same sweater. So let's see how many.
His other common one is every day's a weekend.
Nice. Yeah.
Well, this is it. I'm pretty active, so I try and get at least 4 days of some serious activity. I swim, do lane swimming. In the summer, instead of skiing, I bike.
Cool.
And I go for a lot of hikes. We just got back from Palm Springs and hiked into the canyons, some of the slot canyons around Palm Springs. Fantastic.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it was great. So yeah, I mean, I'm out all the time, so I don't sit around and code all day long. I try and break my day up and just enjoy the outdoors. When I worked before I got into tech, and I was in an office job, because when I got into tech, I was remote. But when I was in an office job, I ended up just packing on the pounds and was pretty unfit. So as soon as I got out of that, I lost 50 pounds right away and started to get really active. Yeah. So
wow,
that's a pretty big guy.
That's a lot of kilos. Let me make I don't know the calculation off the top of my head.
20 kilos. 22 kilos.
Nice. Wow.
Yeah,
I'm glad he translated it into pounds so I didn't have to figure it out.
Well, in Canada, when you ask someone for his weight, they always say pounds. But if you go to the store and you're getting any groceries, it's in grams and kilos. Height is always in feet and inches, but if you're measuring something, it's always meters.
Yeah.
It's just we still haven't converted 100%. We drive in kilometers per hour though. So, and our temperature is Celsius, so pretty much climatized to that. So.
I was about to say I remember the temperature in Celsius because I have these images of myself looking at every day the weather bulletin in Saskatchewan to see how cold was it gonna get, and I said, my memory reads to me that it was definitely in Celsius. So, but no, it's good to hear. I like hiking as well, and I never where is Palm Springs as well? Just because of my geography is a bit bad. Is in America, in the US.
Yeah,
I mean.
it's California, and it's about an hour, 2 hours out of LA.
Oh, nice. Oh, okay. I've seen a movie that I think was set in Palm Springs or around Palm Springs. So it's like very
Tons of them.
deserty looking, really.
It is very deserty, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Joshua
I
Tree
love.
National Park is near there.
Okay, yeah, I get it now. It's clicked. Amazing. Wow, that must be really nice to climb there. Not to climb, to hike.
Hike, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so let's do some iOS related icebreakers. So I'm gonna ask them quick, not that you really have to think about them too much, but let's see what your answers are, and anybody who's watching live, you can throw your answers in there as well. So starting storyboard versus programmatic UI.
Am I allowed to say both?
Yeah.
You can, but what would you where would you lean more towards? Like,
well, I started with storyboard, but I haven't done anything in UI kit for 3 years pretty much, so
makes sense.
yeah, but I did programmatic UI as well.
So my next question is going to be useless since you just answered it. UI kit or Swift UI?
Yeah, Swift UI.
Nice.
That'll ruffle some feathers for some people. There's still people who are hating on Swift UI for some reason. Core data or Realm?
Well, that's interesting because it used to be Realm, but now I'm converted to core data.
Nice.
I agree. Core data and CloudKit are my secret I heart UI kits. I absolutely love CloudKit and the features that you can do. So for me, it's like one of those things where I wish I could work with it more. I haven't been able to, but I really do like the whole integration of core data and CloudKit. And I think iOS 9, core data had a really bad reputation, but once 10 came out, and then since 10, core data has been really, really easy to work with. People hate on it for some reason. I don't know why. MVC or MVVM?
MVVM.
MVVM. Okay.
But sort of a hybrid of it.
Nice.
And so when I work with mentees now, they were introduced to MVC because they just need to know it. But I teach them MVVM-C because I feel like that's the best for UI kit. They learn UI kit purposely for job reasons. And then I think with Swift UI, that's also controversial because now a lot of people are making videos saying don't do MVVM in Swift UI. So where do you stand on the design pattern in regards to using Swift UI, and what's your sort of go-to pattern for that when you're starting a project out?
Yeah, I think Mark Moykin sort of coined the term voodoo. View object. I can't even remember what they stand for. But I mean, I had said that I was using MVVM and was always getting corrected on my YouTube channels by people saying, no, that's not real MVVM. So I'm not even exactly sure what pure MVVM is. I use it's more of an aggregate view model type thing. Where I'll use environment objects and as long as the projects aren't too big, I can use those for most of my views. So
Nice.
yeah, I
Interesting.
mean, but someone's always going to argue whether or not it's a true MVVM or not.
It's
I
not true
agree.
MVVM. Oh, sorry, you go, Craig.
No. You can say. I was just gonna say I agree. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's not true MVVM unless it comes from the real MVVM region of France. You know, where people talk about it's not real champagne unless it comes from,
Yeah, exactly.
like,
Yeah.
I don't know what region it is. I tried to make it witty, but then I couldn't think. By the way, hi to Ed Kraus who's watching. Hi, mate. Just stuff.
So the pattern I use is it's both MVVM and Redux. And this guy wrote an article, but he can't do an update because of his current job. So we've talked in DMs about it, and I feel like the structure is probably the best. And it's what I use for any of my Swift UI projects. I just like the setup. I've tweeted this out before, and he says in my view there is no contradiction since Redux is the architecture pattern of the business logic and the infrastructure layers, and MVVM sits in the presentation layer. So this is how he structured it, and I really like his article's really good. It's a little outdated. It's not really recent to Swift UI, so you have to do some tweaking. But overall, I think it's a really good structure, and I think really you should do what you feel is right on your project and not really worry about what everyone else thinks. But when it comes to YouTube, it's hard because everyone wants to be, they want to be quick to correct someone in what they do. So
Yeah,
I
I
want to
can
say thank you
imagine.
because, like, you upload videos way more than I do. I probably will never get to that pace, but I do it more for the love, and I'm not trying to appease the YouTube gods. I just try to do, what's comfortable. Lately, I haven't really done a lot just for my own personal reasons, but I do want to say that I appreciate the videos that you put up and the video and the work that you do, and I know what you go through. So I know what you do when people don't understand. Like, he literally just did a video a week ago, and now he has like, well, I know Stewart enough to know he's got like 20 videos waiting, and so they're all like basically just popping out like Skittles. So it's great to see, and I know that I've learned stuff from you, and so yeah, I just wanted to mention that. I think not a lot of people actually appreciate the work that streamers do or YouTube content creators do, and so I wanted to at least acknowledge that here today to you. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes. And
By the
yeah, I
way,
was
which video editing program do you use for your
I use
editing?
Camtasia. It does my
Camtasia. That's
recording
right.
and my editing.
That's
Yeah.
right. I remember you saying that, but now everyone else knows.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm gonna turn it over to Anna and let Anna start talking more in regards to your journey into iOS.
nice. Had a question I wanted to ask right away, but I think I'll have to be patient and wait because I have, not an order of things I want to ask, but I was thinking about going a little bit chronologically and talk to you about when you first started and why you first started, and a little bit about the amazing work that you're doing now, without stealing too many questions from Craig.
Sure.
um, So let me start with the broadest question known to man. First of all, why did you start learning iOS? What pushed you?
I had just been I had just been let go from my job and was too old to try and find another one. So I needed something to keep my mind active. And coincidentally, this happened in 2014. And I had always had an interest in developing iOS apps. Objective C never really took hold, but in 2014, Swift was released, and I had the time, so I just dug right into it. And within probably a month or so, I had an app on the App Store. So It's been just going nonstop from there. So I had an app on the App Store with Swift 1.0, so it was ready.
Nice. Exactly. It was
Yeah.
ready to. The same when people. I remember when recently, a couple of years ago, someone had their first Swift UI app on the store, and everyone was shocked. They were like, "What?" And now, of course, I think everyone, when it's trying, like, it's hard to find someone who's now starting with UI kit. Although it's, I'm sure it's valid for their own reasons. But
Well,
I
I
really like what
understand
you.
if you're looking for a job. Yeah.
You're looking for a
Hmm.
job, you have to start with UI
Yeah.
kit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I understand that.
but yeah, I think I mean, my personal opinion, which maybe is controversial, I think this is something that's going to change quite quickly in the next few years. But that's So for what I was gonna, I was gonna say something that you mentioned that I think it's quite impressive the fact that you obviously being let go from a job is quite a tough. I mean, I'm going to assume, because if that happened to me, I would be a little bit. It'll be hard to react, I think, in a positive way. The way you did, you're like, I'm gonna learn. Like, I like the what's the word? The I don't like using the word growth mindset, because it's very very Twitter-esque. But I like the way that you didn't you decided to create something new out of a bad situation, and learn iOS. And now, look, I depend on you a lot, actually, for a lot of my side projects. I know if I have to learn something, but not just knowing how to do it and quickly get it done, but if I want to know something deeply, I ask you. And I guess it's like when you first learned, like, you had a month from when you decided, I'm going to learn iOS development, to your first app. How did you go about learning this in 2014?
Oh, they. Oh, I think I took and I'm not saying that this is the best way to go about it now. I would go about it completely differently. But I think I took a Udemy course. I think it must have been a
Yeah.
Udemy course on Swift, an overview, and build 20 apps, and you'll be an iOS developer at the end of the course, right? But it got me enough information so that I then knew that I could start to do searching online for information, as limited as it was because Swift was so new. So my first project was fairly basic. It was everything that I do sort of scratches an itch of something that I want to do, and there may be something on the App Store already, but I think I might as well do it myself because I'll learn something in the process, and that's the main thing. I'm learning something in the process. So yeah, I just took the Udemy course, and then I started doing a lot of cutting and pasting from
Mm-hmm.
Stack Overflow or whatever, and massaging the code until it worked. I don't recommend
I
that.
love that.
I don't recommend it at all, but that's what I did. And that's one of the things I learned that you probably shouldn't do, but it all depends on what kind of resources are available. And there are so many more resources available now that you don't have to do that. So, I'll have some
Mm-hmm.
things to say about that probably later on, because I think that's a big mistake, is to cut and paste and not really understand what you're doing.
Interesting. I think I share a little bit of this. When I first started, I was studying at uni, like, a conversion course to go from, like, normal, um, you know, normal degree. Like, I was a really bad scientist. When I say really bad, honestly, trust me, really, really bad. And I wanted to become, I don't know, just a developer. I wanted to make apps. So when I was in my course, a lot of the time I was like, I am 2 days away from my deadline. I don't know what to do. I'm going to copy some code and just kind of hodgepodge it together and hope something works. So I can kind of, like, relate to the way that I guess you got started. I don't know, as you said, if I learned much from that. The way that I
No.
learned the most afterwards is when I was massaging the code, like changing things around and understanding why, if I was changing something, it was working, and if I was keeping it the same, instead it was doing something else. So
Well, that's a good technique. That's an excellent technique to do. Copy the code and then change it and see if you can break it.
mm,
And then if you can break it and
ah,
fix it, then you've learned.
nice.
Yeah.
Oh, I like this. I'm already invading Craig's session. I think that's gonna be my hobby from now on. He's gonna put me in the second section from now on, just so I cannot.
No, I'm gonna keep
I
you in the
can
first
read.
one just so you can keep invading my section.
No, but jokes aside, I think it's of course everyone learns in different ways. You know, it's everyone has a different mind, and of course I'm sure you were in the education sector for many years, so you know that better than anyone. Is anything that you experienced when you were in education influence the way that you were learning or the way that you were approaching your learning when you started iOS development?
It's probably structure. You know what, and you can probably tell from my YouTube videos that they're pretty structured. So I mean, I write a script before I even record a video, and go through a script, and that was kind of what my lessons were. But I was teaching math, computer science when I taught. I only taught for 12 years before I got into administration
Only.
and then IT administration. But um, everything has to be planned because I'm deeply afraid of making mistakes in front of people.
Same.
And so that's why you'll never see my face when I'm coding, because everything has to be, in my mind, as good as it can get for me before I'm going to release that to the world. And so
Wow.
preparation and being thorough are something that's important to me. So I like to think that you know my videos will stand the test of time.
100%. And I like what you said. I feel I once again I relate very much, and I almost heard the very common saying that a lot of teachers said to me my entire career, which was "fail to prepare, prepare to fail." I've heard
Right.
that a lot when I was in Canada. I don't know if it was a Canadian saying or if just my teacher said that to me all the time. But do you feel like sometimes, for me at least, I feel like I'm like that a lot. I'm always afraid. I'm terrified of making mistakes in public, which is why being on a live show right now, I have all my fidget, toys trying to calm me down. Sometimes it's not easy. But how do you like? Is there anything you do besides the preparation to, I guess, because, sorry, let me rephrase my question. What I struggle with something similar, which is that everything has to be perfect. It has to stand the test of time. But what sometimes happens is I don't push anything out into the public because I take so much time making something perfect, and then by the time I've I've spent too long on it, I get bored of it. So how do you keep yourself motivated to do something until it's at the stage where you're happy for that to go out?
Well, I guess it's not such a big issue for me because the topics that I choose usually are pretty limited. So I
Mm.
can, focus on things and have a narrow focus so that I'm not diving into something that I don't know. In fact, I won't release something unless I know it, and then I can cover it to an extent that I think is going to help other people. So I'm actually doing a series of videos now that are deep dives into particular topics that I used to find confusing, that I never understood. I knew how to use them and I knew what was going on, but I didn't really understand how it worked in the background. So researching and creating these videos have been really good for me because now I can I can explain it to somebody and feel confident that my explanation is going to be understood, hopefully.
Wow,
I
that's I think you've also unintentionally given me a tip for something to do on how not to just abandon things I want to put out into the world and stuff, which is to have smaller, like to make smaller things rather than thinking like something huge. Like I'm gonna make a 12-part course on I don't know, on Swift UI. I'm like, I'm gonna release something a bit smaller but more focused. I guess like that makes sense. That's a good tip. So thank you for that.
Uh,
I'd like to jump on that one. So like the fact that right now I'm mentoring six junior devs, and one of the things that I learned growing as an iOS engineer was I ran a meetup group for 3 years, and I found that when you are forced to teach something to other people, you learn something better. And so what I would do for me would be, okay, I have a month, I'm going to put this on the schedule. And it would be something that was was a little bit complicated for me. But by the time that month grew, because I knew the pressure would be, I'd have to learn it, I'd have to know it well enough to teach it, and then I have to be comfortable enough to be able to answer any questions that are asked. So that ended up making me push myself more. And so I feel like what you're saying is very true. Like you pick topics that are that you may find a challenge, and then when you're ready you teach it. But that's the best way to learn, and the best way to teach is force yourself. And my mentees now, they're now starting that journey where I'm like, okay, you're gonna have to teach generics, and I've never taught them, I've never talked about them. I'm like, you do the research, you come back to me, and now you're gonna present generics. Another student, I say, you're gonna present MVVM, and like they know sort of about it, but you're gonna show what, like, how to set it up and how to use it with an API. And so that pushes them to do the research to then present, and it allows them to, one, feel the pressure, two, know that they're going to present in front of people who are like them, and like give them the ability to be comfortable, but also push their limits. Because I think a lot of junior devs, they feel they get too relaxed at times, and so you have to like push your limits when with things that you're not comfortable with. So when like one of my students, she's like, "Oh, well, help me here." No, you're like relying on me to be your crutch when I know you can do it. And so I won't answer the question, and then like an hour later she answers the question. So it's like, yeah, exactly what I said.
Yeah.
You're trying to use me as your crutch, and I think that's great that that's your approach still. So I just wanted to jump in on that. Sorry.
Yeah, I think all too often what we do is that we'll allow the code completion in Xcode to generate the code for us, and we'll know that there's an action in here, but you don't really understand, how did it go from the code, because when you start to type in Xcode, you get the quick help, and it's always more complicated than what you end up with when you hit on that enter key, and all of a sudden your trailing closures get collapsed, and it just works. And so, I mean, that's what the video that I released, I think this morning, was this one on the trailing closure syntax, because that dumbfounded me. I mean, I knew all about this, and I've watched other people in their videos where they'll just collapse that final parentheses and add another label, and it just works. And so I wanted to really understand how and why that happens, and that was sort of the genesis behind that video. So that now I'm really, really comfortable with that. I don't need to have the code completion. I can just start directly from the actual construct and reduce it to any one of the different. If there's multiple trailing closures, I can collapse them down to whichever one that I want. So by digging deeply into something, you understand it far better.
I like this. I think there's a lot of discourse recently, especially when sometimes I go online, I'm like, what to do when you're first at a new job, and they say, be careful about getting into rabbit holes. But I actually think that, and I think maybe you agree, that sometimes rabbit holing, yes, it takes, if you're diving deep into a topic, you're wasting a few hours, maybe a few days on it. But then in a lot of cases, you are saving a lot of time because you now understand something deeply and you can use it more to your advantage. So I like this. His approach.
And it also depends on the topic. I mean, trailing closures is a pretty limited topic, right? It's one thing, but I would, but it's incredibly interesting to me anyway. So, I think a lot of people think that I probably talk too much in my videos. So I always tell people, well, do it at double speed, and I'll be like everybody else. But I like to always provide background and things like that. So.
You do too much video in your videos.
I do too much video. Yeah.
Good grief, people.
I think I like your this kind of I cannot speak English today. How you indulge your curiosity, and I guess that's one of your secret weapons on how then you build maybe confidence, right?
Oh, it absolutely builds confidence. Yeah. But the other thing though is that people think because I may have 250 videos out there that dive deeper into a number of different topics that I must know an awful lot. But more often than not, when I'm building something, I'll do a Google search and find my own videos that I have to watch to figure out what it is that I have to do.
That's
And
awesome.
I met with a fellow that I have this thing where, if people want to buy me a coffee, they can buy me a coffee. And this guy got in touch with me. He's in Vancouver, and he says, I'd rather actually buy you a real coffee and have a chat with you. And that's great. So he came over and we went out for coffee, and he was trying to engage me in partnering him with a number of projects and whatever. And I said, there's a real mistake that when you see people on YouTube who are doing these videos and they're perfect in their coding, don't think that you can ask that person a question and he's going to have that answer for you right away, because it's just not the case. So I mentor a fair number of people, and oftentimes they'll say, well, can I get you on a live chat so you can take a look at my code and answer the question? I go, there's not a hope that I'm going to be able to do that. I need to be able to live with your project for a couple of days so I can really understand what's going on. There's no way I can look at somebody else's code right now and determine what the problems are. Eventually, I probably will, but I got more to say about that too, about mentors seeking help. But maybe I'll wait till we get into Greg's section.
Definitely.
Anyway.
But this is Craig's section. It doesn't matter. It's all everyone. No, I'm joking. We'll keep the organized divide, because also you wouldn't believe it, because I know I seem a bit chaotic now, but I am also very structured. So I will respect the boundaries of the sections. And
Okay.
We're okay.
But it was funny when you said just now about, you said sometimes I go back and watch my own videos, because I remember, and I was like, I don't know who it was that said that, and I was about to mention, oh yeah, someone said on Twitter that they go back and watch their own videos, and I guess it was you. So I have it's not strictly,
it's my note taking.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Okay, actually, you know what? I was writing a slide like half an hour before this about my note taking, so I'm just gonna improvise at this point and ask you, how do you take your notes and how do you organize them? Do you have a system, or how do you handle it?
Yeah, well, I do a lot of research, and before I do any video, I will go and get every resource that I can find on that particular topic, whether that be articles, not so much other people's videos anymore. And I don't watch a lot of other people's videos on a topic that I'm going to create, because I don't want to steal their ideas or their concepts. I'd rather do it on my own. So it's mostly blog posts or other things that I'll find. And so I use Notion. I know that Craig, you use Notion, or the two of you do. And there's a great share plugin for Notion that works on iOS and it works on Safari, that anytime I find any link, I just tap a button and it adds another row to a line in a repository or a file on Notion that I can go to, and then I can categorize afterwards. So, for example, when WWDC was on, everybody was putting out posts on what's new on some particular API. And every one that I got, I just saw that, okay, this is great. I just tapped on this button and it just created another link. And then at the end of the day, I'd go back and I would add a category to these and categorize them, so that when I started to do my videos on iOS 16, I had on any one of those topics maybe 7 or 8 different viewpoints on that particular topic that I would then go back and read. And then I would start to create my own. I always have a project associated with every one of my videos, because I need a start and an end goal, basically. So I would then create something that was unique and then try and apply all these things that I learned from my readings and the documentation and the WWDC videos as well. So, but it is generally just keeping track of all the information that I can find and then going back to it when I need it.
Nice. I think it's important now, because it's as you say, it's part of your structure and it's part of this flow that you've really, I guess, really perfected. I'm still finding my flow at the moment. I had a really bad habit of changing note-taking system like every 2 months, but so far I've been sticking with Obsidian as my main knowledge bank
Mm-hmm.
for about
Mm-hmm.
9 months, which is as long as, I've had something. So no, I'm quite happy with it, but I do enjoy Notion as well. I think it's good, and I don't know if you folks agree, but to me the most important thing, which I've learned at my expense, is when you're finding where to store your notes or how to take notes, the best recipe is to keep something consistent, right? If you can keep it consistently and keep this flow without much effort to try it out, then it's probably the one for you. So is there anything that you did, I guess, when you started learning iOS development, that except for the the hodgepodge of copy pasted code and these type of things, that you wouldn't do now?
No, I think anytime that you work on a project and come to a conclusion, that's a good thing. It doesn't really
Nice.
matter how you get there. It's the process, and you learn from it. The danger comes in is when you have to update that code and you had no idea how it worked in the first place. But that's been my downfall on some of those older apps. And especially when we went from Swift 2 to Swift 3, was it when everything changed?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I had at that point I had maybe 4 or 5 apps on the App Store. I had some frameworks, the CocoaPods that I had imported that were no longer supported. So that becomes a nightmare trying to go back and update those things, because then you really have to understand what those errors mean, right? So
Yeah.
um,
100%.
that's a learning process in itself,
Yeah, learning how to learn.
right?
I think it's, how do you keep and then I'm sorry, I will, if it's time to switch, we can switch, but how do you keep almost introspective, like as you're learning and as you were developing your learning style for iOS, how did you make sure that you were like, you knew when to switch something? What was the telltale signs, I guess, that something wasn't working, if there
When the
was
app
any?
crashed.
Touche.
If it's not broken, don't fix it, right?
Yep.
Or
So
it's
I guess
running really slow.
and you're like, what is going
Yeah.
on? My favorite mistake, I guess it's maybe a little unrelated, but every time I build UIKit, now I don't do it much, but I did a hackathon the other day and I was doing something in UIKit, and I was having a UI hosting controller, so I was using my Swift UI view in UIKit, and I build it, and then it shows up on the screen and it's all kind of random shapes, like it's not that I want it to be full screen, and it was just like this big on the screen. And I say, why is it like that? Guess what I forgot to do for you, Aki? Guess what I
Translating, auto resizing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm glad I don't have to deal with that anymore. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, neither do
Yeah,
I.
exactly. Maybe there was the video of like the thank you Swift UI team. Maybe I should have said that in the,
Exactly.
I had a snippet on my Xcode, like back when I was doing mostly UIK apps, that whenever I typed like F off, it would autocomplete to that line to translate. Also, I don't even know how to say it by heart because I never typed it out. I just typed F off, and then it would show.
Paul Hudson just used to type in the initials, and I can't remember what they were. So he used to type the initials, and it just auto completed after that. So
nice.
That's funny.
I was about to ask any Xcode tips and tricks, but
We can do that.
Really...
We can do that later.
Okay, yeah, that I was about to say, is that really a violation of section ordering?
I guess it's more about the people who are watching, if we're talking too much and they want to, we're talking too much on the podcast, so I don't know. We'll see.
I do have. I know. Oh, sorry. You go.
No, go ahead.
I had a question about when you started to get involved with the iOS community. So when you went past the, learning for yourself and practicing things, to why did you decide to share your learnings? Then why did you decide to get active on Twitter and these type of things?
Yeah, I was just after Swift UI was released, I was on. I reached out to Sean Allen, who at that point was doing these indie dev discussions, and he was always talking about people who are already developers or who had just become developers. And I reached out to him. I says, I think you're missing a whole group of old people who are coding just for the sake of coding. And I says, you might be interested in what I have to say. So that was my first podcast. So I got on with Sean, and we got into discussions about Swift and Swift UI. And because Swift UI was so new, nobody else knew. Everybody knew as much as everybody else did. So I sort of saw that as an opportunity to focus on something and become more knowledgeable in something and be able to share that with others. So my whole YouTube of the last 3 years has basically been my learning path with Swift UI, having spent the previous 5 or 6 years in UI Kit. I could never do what I'm doing now using UI Kit. I would be spending way too much time building the interface, whereas now I can bang out a project or put together the UI and then get to what is really important. And so I think Swift UI was a real catalyst to that. And I had done YouTube videos for the company that I used to work with. I did all the videos for the channel for that technology. So I was comfortable enough with Camtasia and with the whole process of publishing. So it was just a matter of me picking topics that I felt comfortable enough to be able to put out there as YouTube videos. So
nice.
I think the first one I did was on Swift, on creating your own Swift package or Swift package manager or something like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I don't know if I've seen that one. I think the one where the first video of yours that I ever saw is, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, because maybe I am going crazy, is the one about using fonts. Or am I going crazy? It was about
that
something.
Wasn't me.
I don't remember exactly. It was something that okay, then it was something else. I'm gonna have to go find it and then post in the link, because I remember I was working on one of my hobby apps, and it was something like this year, right? Not before. It was at the beginning, not this year. I don't know, the last 6 months, and it was something that was like kind of not a huge problem that I had, but it's something I really wanted to understand. It was something that was bugging me quite a lot. And then I found your video and you explained it in so much detail that I was like, I am happy that there is someone who has put all this effort to explain this properly, not just show me how to do it. And I'll have to find this video again, because I'll have it on my YouTube saved, because it was great.
Okay.
So a couple shout outs. David Jacobson, I believe, is the correct way to say it. If he's around, if I said that wrong, please let me know. He said, incredible guest choice, remnants of Stewart's lessons all over my mind, all over my indie apps and my company's code base. He also said, I just found out about this podcast exists like 2 minutes ago, so super excited to subscribe and support future episodes. Great stuff, Craig and Anna. Thank you very much. I saw Azam Muhammad on Twitter saying he was watching. I'm not sure if he's still around, but we definitely appreciate his support. He's also a big YouTube content provider, so seeing other content providers in here means a lot, especially to me, because a lot of you guys I've watched too. So it's just like, it's like real full circle for me. So let's get into more of like things today. I tweeted out about a week and a half ago. So I said, the more I work with junior devs, the more I realize that there are 5 skills that they need minimum to get a job. And I wouldn't necessarily say that if they have all these 5 skills, they're probably not junior devs, but I said Swift was number 1, UI Kit was number 2, app architecture is number 3, networking API is number 4, and Git is number 5. And I was curious to see what I'm putting you on the spot, so you don't have to have like 5 that rattled off on the top of your head, but where would that list start for you in regards to knowing where you've been knowing what most of like your YouTube channel, like how most people take your content in, what would your recommendation be as far as like someone starting out?
Yeah, without sort of getting into UI kit versus Swift UI, because that's, I think in 5 years' time, we're not going to be having that discussion.
Correct.
But so thinking from the perspective of somebody who's wanting to get into um, learning iOS development, just the basics of the Swift language. So, for example, if you take Paul Hudson's, both of his 100 Days of Swift and 100 Days of Swift UI, the first 10 or 15 lessons of those days is pure Swift. You're not developing anything, you're just running in playgrounds. So you have to get an understanding of the language before you start working on the UI. I think it's also important, and in no, I mean, that's number one, but in the rest of them in no particular order, is that you really should get into a source control right away. Because that's super important. That you get all these people who are duplicating their projects and having duplicates and zipped up files around and passing those around when source control can do that for you. You have to learn, because what 90% of the apps are out there are ones that where you're querying some API, so you have to understand the codable protocol and decoding JSON and all that's in there, because the JSON that you get isn't always going to be standard, so you're going to have to understand how to massage that the receiving data. And data persistence. Make a decision on how you're going to persist your data over time between sessions. And concurrency. I think it's really important to really dive into and learn async await and move forward with that. I don't know, that's probably 5. Anyway, those are sort of my initial thoughts about that.
It's interesting because I think I agree actually with these 100%. But concurrency is one that I wouldn't have said right away, because I feel like, maybe it's just my impression, a lot of people are a little intimidated by that. It's one of those topics that it's almost like, oh, concurrency. I mean, now of course with the sync away it's maybe a bit easier than it used to be in the past. So what's your recommendation for topics that seem scary?
Well, yeah, I think that's scary, but I think once you understand that, and particularly now, I think with async await's a bit better. Completion handlers were something that I think got an awful lot of people. I mean, I can't remember the last time I used a completion handler now, though. But I do remember that when result, with the result enum was first introduced, that sort of confused me. But as soon as I got that, and completion handlers, it just sort of changed my whole way of dealing with API calls and dealing with errors, because that was something that, so many people, when I'm waving my hands around, I just talk like an Italian.
We love that. We love that.
but oftentimes you'll see people who do YouTube videos that their error handling is print error.localized description. And I think you got to try and get beyond that, because that error localized description isn't going to help anybody out when you ship your app. So that whole result type, getting an error and being able to deal with it and present something in your view, is something that I feel pretty strongly about. So that's that. I don't know where I'm going with this, but concurrency is that once you do understand it, it's important, because if you're going to make any calls, you're going to have to deal with it. Those calls aren't coming right back to you right now. So either you deal with it in the completion handler, or you deal with it through the new concurrency methods of async and await. So I think it's just important stuff to understand.
Definitely.
Because you're going to hit it sooner than later.
I was about to say, it's not your problem yet, but it might be. If you don't make it your problem, that's going to be your problem then.
Yeah.
Nice catchphrase. Good.
What I've been doing with juniors is building on the skill set. So what I've done is we start with completion blocks first, then we move to publishers, because actually Swift UI with publishers work really well and work pretty similar than with async await. So right now, it's kind of a step process. They build an API using closure blocks, then you build an API using publishers, and then eventually you'll build an API using async await. So now they have all three, and they know why, and then they'll respect why you don't have to use closure blocks anymore. But you'll also know how to use publishers in the sense of using it with Swift UI or even UIKit. So I feel like that whole understanding all three and how they work really does help you as a developer understand usage, and you never know what you're going to see. Like, you could open up legacy code and somebody could be using a completion block, and if you don't know what the heck you're looking at, you're going to be stuck. So I feel like it's good to know. I try to teach as much as knowing. So like, I know that you kind of skipped over the UI kit and Swift UI thing. But I felt like it's important to understand where you go in your career dictates Swift UI versus UI kit. So if you're looking to if you're a college student and you're not going to get a job for 3 or 4 years or whatever, stick with Swift UI and don't worry about it. Like, that's where you should be. If you're looking to get a job in the next 8 to 12 months, then I think you have to focus on UI kit. But your portfolio should have some Swift UI stuff, so that way you can show that you know both, and that will kind of give you a leg up to me. And then we're in that weird transition. It's like what the transition we had with UI with Objective-C and Swift. Mm-hmm. And so I remember I went to a special event at Apple that I'm not really supposed to talk about. And during one of my chats with the engineers, the guy was so shocked I was using Swift. And this was like 1.2, and 1.2 wasn't bad. And he was like, I can't believe you're using Swift. None of the engineers that were looking at my code were using it. They were still using Objective-C. So it to me, it depends on where you're going to go and what your path is. It's never like, there's no one answer for everyone. You really have to decide what you want to do and where you want to go. But, the mentees I work with all want to get jobs in the next 8 months. And so it's UI kit, because I'm like, you're going to we're going to do compositional layout. They can pretty much build any interface they want using compositional layout. I skip table views. I don't waste their time on them. You can build a table view and collection view, and collection views are just more powerful. So we focus on that. And so I feel like, again, if you're looking to get into a job in the next 6 to 8 months, it's UI kit. Unfortunately, that sucks, because it's like my everyday job. I do Swift UI, but I teach UI kit, and so it's kind of like, I have to go back and do it. But it's good because I get to learn more. I get to solidify. I didn't really do a lot of compositional layout because that came out right when Swift UI came out, and I always say, had compositional layout came out a year before Swift UI, that would have been like, if Swift UI never came out and compositional layout was the only thing, that would have blown up the internet, because compositional layout really changed collection view for the better. Like, the way you use it, it's still a little weird at times, but I feel like it's way better than what we had previous. And I feel like it's grown and it's gotten better. And I feel like it doesn't get as much respect because of Swift UI, but it's a really good kit. And I feel like if you're gonna do anything in UI kit, you start with compositional layout. So
I can't disagree with you. The people that I mentor tend to be not looking necessarily for a job. They're people that are older, reached out to me. They're all Swift UI. So, and that's just from my vantage point. So
no, that's great. And I think that's people need to understand that there's no one set. So like, there's no one set answer. You have to if you tell me what your end goal is, I can tell you where you should go. But if I'm never gonna answer Swift UI or UI kit without knowing that, because I'm doing a disservice to you by just giving you my opinion on it. Swift UI is expanding, it's growing. We all know in a couple of years it's gonna be what we use, but that doesn't mean businesses are there yet, and it's gonna take some time. and you still need to do legacy code. You're still going to have to deal with learning how to do it. I don't do a lot of like Swift UI communication with UI kit stuff. Like I don't ever do it, so I can't really answer those questions. So that's good to know. Can you share like three tips that you would give developers who are starting out or who are looking to improve their skills, since you do that in particular with your channel?
I think the first thing is to get on either or both Twitter and Mastodon and start following other developers. That's my source of information. I spend an hour or an hour and a half every morning just going through my feed. When people, I'm still on Twitter because there's still there's still people who haven't moved over to Mastodon yet.
Yeah.
And there's still an awful lot of people who follow me. The majority of people who follow me are still on Twitter. The majority of people I follow are on Mastodon. So it's sort of like where I am in this hierarchy of things. But if you're not on it, you're missing out. And I tell that to everybody that I'm on. They say, well, they don't know. They think Twitter is all about somebody posting about their food or whatever. And the first thing that I did on Twitter was I just created a list. And I never watch the main feed. All I ever do is read my list of people that I follow. And then when Mastodon came on, the first one that I noticed on Mastodon was Paul Hudson. So I joined Mastodon, and the first thing I did is I took a look at the list of people that he follows and started to follow them. And then started to, and I think that, so if you're ever curious about who to follow, about who's going to feed you with current information and up-to-date information, well, take a look at my list of people that I follow on Twitter and Mastodon, and I guarantee you that you're going to get a list of quality contributions that are going to improve your coding. So to me, that's the number one resource for learning how to code is the social media, the Twitter and the Mastodon.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was the first thing. Another thing is don't get stuck watching videos, even though I do watch videos. Don't get stuck just watching videos. Get a project going and start working on that project. And realize that there is no single source of truth when it comes to learning. You've got to get information from multiple people, and don't trust everything that you read on Medium, because there are so many people that post blogs on Medium, and there are so many inaccuracies in their blog posts. Not everyone, but an awful lot. And so don't trust it. Just because somebody writes something doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be true. Notwithstanding, there are people like Donnie Walls and Anton Vanderlee that you can absolutely, or John Sundell, that you can absolutely trust. But if you don't know who's posting it, and if they don't have a credentials, then don't necessarily trust what they're in there. It's not that when they say that this is the best architecture to write your app in, that's not necessarily true just because they wrote it down. And maybe just another thing is don't ever assume that you're going to be finished learning. It's a continual process.
Forever.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I like that. I love these tips. The first one, actually, I think I was like, okay, yeah, I agree. I do it. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Mastodon. Like that's what really leveled up my learning when I first started. What took me from, just doing my job and, enjoying what I was doing to actually getting like really, really passionate about the community and learning things that otherwise I wouldn't have learned, and getting the latest, news and scoops. But I love your tip, like, A and B, the second one, which is to have a list, because I find that nowadays on my Twitter, at least, all I see on the front page is like random stuff that it's on my For You tab that I have no interest in. I have absolutely no interest in this. I don't see the people that I care anymore. I'm not going to talk about the Twitter algorithm and these type of things, but I really like the idea of having a list for more focused and more intentional use of Twitter, rather than just being there to waste time like I do sometimes. So yeah, I love that. Is something I'm gonna take on like immediately as soon as we stop this. I'm immediately gonna go make my list and look at your list probably, because that way I'll make sure I don't forget someone.
Yeah,
And
don't look at the people that I follow. Look at my
You look at
list.
his list. Yep.
a list, yeah,
Yeah,
nice.
That's the same thing
yeah,
I do. I have a list
yeah.
for sports as well. So
Oh,
when I just want to go focus on one team, like the Lakers or the Raiders or whatever, I just go there, and then everything is like it's all sports related, and I don't have to like filter through a lot of that. So I guess my next question would be, what are some of the most common mistakes you see beginners make when learning Swift, and how can they avoid making the mistake? I guess would be the best way to ask that question.
Some of the most common mistakes. You gave me these questions ahead of time. Now I'm trying to find out and I went through these things. I'm going to give you bang on answers, and now I can't even remember.
but it happened to me last time as well. I was supposed to ask Daniela some really specific questions. I couldn't find the tab with the notes anywhere. I couldn't find it. I had to
So
wing
I'll
it.
just wing. I'll wing it. So what are the most common mistakes that people make?
Yeah,
Beginners
beginners.
that you see beginners while they're
Oh
learning
yeah,
Swift.
they take on their dream project, and it's way too broad, and
Oh,
and they get themselves immersed in things, and they don't plan it through. And I'm working with the one person right now who has a really really nice concept, but they're trying to build the whole thing all at once. And I think that's not a great idea. You've got to modularizing your project is really really important, and to break it out into smaller chunks and work on a smaller piece of that project until you can master that particular concept, and then put it back into the bigger project. And going along with that is that when you're asking for help from somebody, because people reach out to me all the time, and they'll have a particular issue with a particular concept, and they'll send me their whole project and say, can you help me with this? And I'm having a hard time trying to even understand what their project is doing. So
Mm,
if you're ever going to ask for help from somebody, is to make sure that you can isolate what your issue is and replicate it in a small little project, and
yep.
send that project to somebody for help. You're way more likely to get assistance that way than if you send them the whole project. And I'm really happy to do that, because if they just send me something that just identifies an issue, I'm more than likely going to be able to solve that for them and get back to them with some suggestions and some tips on how to do that. And that just opens up another conversation. So I think the big takeaway there is don't bite off more than you can chew, and sort of know where you're going. I know that's difficult to do, because if you
You're
don't know
new,
what you don't know,
right?
that's really difficult.
Yes,
But
big time. And
try and
I
break it
think
up.
the important thing that you said here was like breaking it up into small chunks, and it's something in our next podcast that we're going to do. So our guest is going to be a junior dev who's learning, and one of the things we had spoke about in the first podcast was um, getting your project going and don't get into to tutorial hell. And I think when you've done that, you understand what I'm referring to. But if you haven't, you're just, oh, okay, whatever. I'm not going to do that. And they probably are. So what we're going to highlight in the next episode is exactly what you just said. Take a project that a junior dev may want to work on, and break it into small chunks of things, and let them identify each of the different aspects of it. And what I always tell my junior devs is create a project that you're going to do, then create and then when you're learning, create another project. And until you've learned it, don't put it into your main project. Once you've understood or grasped the API that you're trying to use, now bring it in, because you're always commenting out stuff and experimenting, and like, let me change this and let me change that. And you want to do that in an experimental project, so that when you're ready, you put it into your project and okay, these are the settings I'm going to use. This is the things that I want to do. And then you put it into your main project, and you don't have comments everywhere, But of
Yeah.
course, the more you do this, you do it in your main ones, because I'm guilty of that. But I think the idea of just creating small projects and learning through the small projects is literally the way you should go, because it helps. And it also, especially if you name it correctly, because you may be like, oh, I know I created a project similar to this. And now you can go back to it a few months later and actually pull it up and look at what you did. And you don't have to like recreate a new project or do any like bringing in anything in particular. And I think it's a really great way to kick off your like knowledge base of one particular thing. So I really like your recommendation. And if you join us in not this next week, but the following week, we're going to do that with a junior dev live. And so you'll be able to see that process. So it's a good little intro. And I'm sure, and we did not talk about that. So Stewart set that up perfectly.
Well, I just thought of one other thing that I thought that is important. The biggest mistake is to learn proper Swift syntax. So in naming syntax in particular, because if you're starting to use lowercase letters to name your classes and structs and uppercase letters for your lets and vars, when you reach out to other people. So I'm thinking that if you want to get help, you want to pay attention to detail, and don't ever post something like that to Stack Overflow, because you'll just get killed. I mean, my very first post to Stack Overflow came back with the guy corrected every one of my mistakes. Like, I think I spelled Xcode with a lowercase x and uppercase C or something,
Wow.
So, and I just got absolutely slammed. And so I get this a lot from people who send me their stuff. And I don't rip into them, but I suggest to them that this is convention, and you better start using this convention. And the other thing is that when you send code to somebody else, remove your comments and extra lines, because we don't need to see all that extra stuff. Send something that's to somebody where the information is really focused, and if possible, start using Swift Lint or some Swift formatter to format your code in a standard way.
I was literally Googling. Yeah.
That's I think it's really important that advice to people who want to be able to get help and sound credible. If you send me clean code, I don't care how bad that code is, I'm probably going to pay much more attention to it than a file that's got 40 commented out things, extra lines all over the place, spaces and misaligned indents and so on and so forth. I mean, that's just my personal bias. You may not feel the same, Craig, but I think that that's really important for new devs to learn, is to clean your code up.
Oh,
it'll just look better. It's so important.
So one of the shortcuts that I make junior devs do is Command D. Right now, it's a different shortcut, but Command D does line delete. So like when you're going through
it duplicates a line now.
Yes, it's duplicate now. But what I like is, okay, there's extra lines that a lot of devs like to leave extra line spaces. So when you tell them to delete the line, then it takes like 15 minutes for them to use their cursor and highlight and then hit I'm like, no, let's go to preferences. Let's go to command, and so we set up Command D, and then I'm like, put your cursor on that line, hit Command D, gone. Go put it on this one, gone. And so that's what I train. But the other one that I'm really harp on is learn Command A, Control I. I'm like, Command A, Control I, Command A, Control I, because that basically will format everything and make it look nicer, especially with Swift UI, because with all the brackets and everything that's going on, there's just so much going on with your code that it works great. And then the last probably shortcut that I drive home is Command Shift O, because a lot of junior devs want to leave that library open. And I'm like, it takes you 45 minutes to open a file. I'm sitting here bored out of my mind. Okay, I'm waiting for you to open. Yeah. Can you please just hit Command Shift O? and then type you should remember the names. It's not a big project, content view, enter, and then I think they start to speed up their process once they understand, but those shortcuts are really important. And I agree. I don't like looking at code that looks sloppy or I can't read. I end up spending 20 minutes fixing it. Then I finally look at it. So most of the time I'll send it back and be like, can you like clean up your code and then let's review. Code cleanup is important. And code. So when I first got my coding job, the best job I ever got was the one I walked in the door day one and they handed me a style sheet for coding. And they said, this is how we write our variables. This is how we write our functions. This is how we write everything. And so it was like, for normal people, you probably be like, why, now you're telling me how to write my functions. But for me, it was like, okay, this is really great because if I'm gone and somebody jumps into my code, if I stuck to the same coding style, then they can jump into the project without having to like, what did he do here and what's he trying to do there? Everything's similar. And so I try to harp that on students as well as getting a consistent way of doing it. Like stick to it in one project. When you move to your next one, improve it if you need to. Then you move to the next one, improve it. But don't change it in the middle of the project where half of it is in one style and half is in another. Because when you come back in 3 months, you'll be like, what was I doing in this code? And most likely you're the one that's going to be lost because, I'll remember it. No, you won't. And you'll be asking questions why. So we have another comment, +1 on creating projects as a learning resource. You learn so much more than you could ever do with online videos. My mistakes mess with things. Make mistakes, mess with things, learn and grow. And I agree. Another great resource for me has been GitHub. I find tons and tons of things that I don't normally find in a tutorial. I'll find in GitHub. Just knowing how to use it, knowing how to search things, like things that people may not have covered in great detail. Like GitHub has been a really great resource for me to just dig in the code and see, okay, I find like a lot of like structure inspiration from GitHub. You'll see someone do something really cool and I'm like, oh, that is really nice. And so I find GitHub as like, it's like the desert, like it's hard to find things, but when you find those hidden gems and you're just like, yo, this is great. For me, that's my like other resource. Cause there are a lot of things that people don't cover in tutorials or, like I want another kind of viewpoint. And so GitHub is really great for that for me. We are getting on an hour and a half. And so I really want to start to wrap this up. So I think you had mentioned asking Stewart about some Xcode stuff earlier.
I wanted to ask for some tips, but now I have a suggestion, Stuart, almost a video request. I think it would be really, because I don't think there's not many resources out there for, there wasn't last time I looked, which was not too long ago, videos on teaching conventions and common conventions and thing when it comes to Swift UI. So I would love to see a video about both conventions or maybe like Xcode tips and tricks, because I'm very passionate about I guess personal productivity and developer productivity when it comes to Xcode. So I think
I have a 3-part series I did just not too long ago on Xcode tips and tricks.
I missed it.
So
there you go.
Yeah, I learned an awful lot myself there too. Completely changed things, learning better shortcuts. And by the way, Craig, my favorite one is Command K, Control I, which deletes the line and cleans up the re-indents on that line, because sometimes that closing brace is on the same line. So your Command D, Control I, or mine it's Control K or Command K.
The other thing I use a ton is I use either Stream Deck or I'll use this other tool where you can just hit little buttons and it will do just really quick shortcuts, so you don't have to remember things. So
Yeah.
I use that a lot to like close left panel because I always forget left panel, right panel, bottom ones, and so I use that to do
Oh
a
yeah,
lot of
those
the
are my fingers
two.
know those ones now.
Yeah, my brain does not want to learn them. It refuses to, so
Yeah.
I try not
Command
to
Y
open
is
them.
is my favorite.
Which one?
I like the Command Y because it
Oh,
drops the
the
console
console.
back down. Yeah,
Yes,
Nice.
awesome.
Nice.
Someone
and mostly
shared
for
that.
video. Yeah,
This guy shared Command Shift J to see the file in the navigation
navigation thing.
project.
Yeah,
Very handy
Smart.
for large projects.
You folks have
yeah.
to know something. Ibrahima just said this. Ibrahima had a talk. It was amazing at Swift Leads. If I think the video is on YouTube. Go watch. He was he was coding live. It was his first ever conference talk, and he was coding live. And I was sweating because I get so scared for people when they're coding live. Absolute, like, it was a masterclass. He was organized so well. He had so many terminal shortcuts, so many, like, he popped up a branch that had the part of the code already done. I was mesmerized the whole way through. When you watch those like spy movie where there's the, like, an amazing display of competence, like, for example, like the John Wick movies, or like, that was exactly that. It was like watching a John Wick movie of someone coding live. It was fantastic. I recommend it. Shout out to Ibrahima big time. It was an amazing talk, and also his attitude was amazing. There was like there was a little like problem. I don't remember, something didn't compile, and I was like, oh no, it didn't build. He's like, it's okay, no problem, it didn't build, it's okay. It was.
That's funny.
I hope. I'm gonna go rewatch the video actually after this because it was really, really good. And Stewart, I remember now what was the first video of yours that I watched. It was the Mac app, but it was on another channel. I think you were a guest on another channel. Not.
I've done stuff for Chris Ching.
Yes.
Code with
I
Chris.
think.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It was. I think it was on that one.
Was it the
Mac
dad
bar.
jokes? Oh, the
Yes!
toolbar.
Yeah, the dad jokes. The dad jokes.
Yeah,
Yes.
the dad jokes.
Yeah. No, yeah, it was awesome. I was like, this is perfect. Everything I need to know and more about the Mac app bar. And I made one because I had lots of colleagues in different time zones, and I always hated to just go on Slack and see that. And then I made the app, and I still use it now. It's very handy. So thank you for that.
I put in Ibram is equal to John Wick, and he replied laughing emoji. Thank you very much, Anna. And I want to know when I used it for the same purpose. The hands, I always thought it was the praying hands, but I found out recently that it's actually a high five. And I was like,
Oh, that's not what that is.
I've been using this for like appreciation
Praise.
Instead. I've been
me
high-fiving
too.
people. So yeah, it's such a. I've been wanting to tweet it out, but I'm like, I'm gonna look like a fool tweeting this out.
Yeah.
So I just didn't. But yeah, I just found out about a week ago that the hands coming together is supposed to be high five.
Well, I just learned that now too.
But do you guys want to learn something like crazy that I discovered recently, and now I can't stop using it? That was really surprising. Do you know the skull emoji with like Gen Z? It means like laughing. When they put a skull, they're laughing. I thought it was like violence, it was like bad.
You mean the dead?
No, just the skull. Because they're dead.
Yeah,
they're laughing so much.
That means they're laughing so much. It
was amazing.
Yes.
And now I can't. Now I use it all the time, and
I have one in particular, Minty, who uses dead all the time. If she's around, she probably will reply with it now in the comments if she's here. But yeah, she uses dead all the time, and she uses chat reaction emojis for everything. She doesn't talk on the mic. She just uses emoji. So it's usually the laugh emoji with the tears, the dead emoji with the skeleton, or the heart emoji. It's funny, but you learn really quick. But I learned about the praying one. I'm still using it as praying. I don't care, but it's supposedly it's high
so
five.
will I.
Well, I don't think I think we've been here long enough. I really would like to say we've definitely enjoyed talking with you, and and I've learned a ton just
Yes.
off of this conversation alone. Hopefully others have from this podcast as well with you, Stewart, and it's just been a pleasure to talk with you and actually get to know you more than just through tweets and DMs. So I definitely want to say it's been a pleasure. And hopefully, are you doing any conferences coming up at all? Speaking at any?
Well, I applied at Swift Leads,
Oh,
so
Oh,
haven't heard back. Of course, that won't be until later on.
oh my
But
God.
no, I haven't applied anywhere else simply because I didn't think I had anything really to say. But uh,
No. If you look,
it's
I
tough.
was about on it because
I don't
I
blame
was
you.
thinking of I am if you are in Swift Lead, I'm 100% coming. Even if they don't accept my talk, I'm 100% coming to listen because it would be awesome. I'm gonna
Well, what I'd like to talk about, and basically that's the gist of the presentation that I pitched, is basically what we're talking about now, but being a bit more organized in terms of giving people tips and tricks for lifelong learning.
yeah.
And
Oh yes.
I mean, and I think that's something that I can talk about. I'm not sure I can talk realistically on topics that would be of particular interest to more experienced devs in depth. Like things like Donnie Walls or Anton Vanelise can get up and speak to those kinds of things. So it's just a different thing, and not everybody wants to hear those kinds of those things in conferences. So
The thing
it's
is, like,
nice to be able to. No, go
no,
ahead.
yeah. Ibrahima just said, "Oh, please, we want to watch you live, Stewart. You have so much to say. Please." He said it in all caps, and I agree. I think the topics sometimes that stick with you the longest are maybe not, like very in depth. Talk on something technical that just came out of WWC, although those things definitely have their place and they are helpful. But the ones that, for me, they really stick is these topics that help you become a better developer all around, but help you grow as a person in total. So I feel like I have already, after this chat with you. We didn't expand. I feel like we didn't expand enough on the lifelong learning, but maybe it's good because that'll be in a conference talk. And I think,
Well,
no, I'm
I
really
have to be
grateful.
accepted first.
I'm
I've received my first rejection already, so that kind of
but I received. I
sets it
think
up.
the first
I've
I
received
applied one
many.
year. I received so it's a hobby.
Yeah.
It's it's one. There was one that at one point I was like, I became religious praying for, and then I kept looking on the paper call, and I'm like, yeah, there's no. I guess I'm not. But it's it's okay. Eventually, it'll be there, and then I think people really want to hear from this. It's going to be one of those things that no matter where your stage in the iOS journey is, if you are a complete novice, like a beginner, or if you are like someone that has been working on Objective-C for 30 years or God knows how long, you will appreciate learning it, because sometimes we forget that we are lifelong learners, right? We feel like we are almost complacent, the fact that I'm an iOS developer, I'm really good at iOS development, I will read up on the latest WWDC, but you will be surprised by how many people in the industry just don't have this philosophy. So I think it's like so important to learn. So yeah, it's gonna be good. I have faith. And thank
We
you
have
so much for.
another.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
sorry. We have another comment that said, "Great to see you. Great to see and hear from Stewart. Appreciate all he does. Thanks."
Oh,
Very nice, thank you.
Anna,
nice.
you were gonna say?
I was just gonna say thank you so much for everything, for all the tips, all the like. I think this is. I'm gonna rewatch the podcast, although I have to bear watching myself and listening to myself
Or
speak, which
listen?
is it's gonna be excruciating. But as I do that, I'm gonna note down some of the tips, because I think it's I've taken back a lot from this. So yeah, thank you so much, and I am really happy that we got to speak face to face, because now it's almost exciting, because after you watch someone's YouTube videos, you're like, they're a real person, they're here. So it's been really exciting. So thank you so much from me.
That's my pleasure, and it always surprises me that I can, I always sort of think that my YouTube videos are geared towards people who are or just learning or just starting out, and there's nothing better for me to get back feedback from people that are are experienced developers to say that they actually learned something from me, and that's what sort of keeps me going. So, and if I can just sort of leave with one thing, and I'm not saying this for myself, but there are so many content providers out there, and there is no money in creating YouTube videos. I mean, you make absolutely nothing in advertising from YouTube. But if somebody does something that you appreciate and then you learn from them, reach out to them and say thank you or give them credit somehow. And I'm not saying that for myself, but I like to try and think that I practice that as well, that whenever I learn something from somebody else, I want to make sure. So, for example, like Muhammad Azam, he just churns stuff out, and I'm such an admirer of his for the way that he can just churn stuff out quickly and in his morning before he goes to work. And that's not something that I can do. We have a completely different style. Everybody learns differently from different people. You've got to find the kind of person that connects with you. But reach out to them afterwards and let them know that you appreciate what they do.
I think this
completely agree.
100%. And you know what? I think the strength of the iOS community in particular, compared to other programming and other development communities, is the strength in community that we have, and the fact that a lot of people are very altruistically spending their time, because it's an act of altruism, spending their time and their energy researching something sometimes so in depth and spending time and time again editing things and pushing it out. So yeah, I really appreciate you both. So now you will be my public thank you to both of you, Craig and Stewart, and to everyone else also because we cannot learn without the external resources. You can try and bang your head on the keyboard as much as you like, but the fact that we all have to be humble and recognize that without the community, everyone's learning process would not be as it is today. So yeah, I really echo this sentiment. So thank you so much for saying that, and I hope everyone does it.
And originally you started off by saying that I'm self-taught. I never use that word self-taught. I use self-directed, because we learn from other people, and my learning is directed by others. So I just don't use that term self-taught, because I'm not teaching myself. I'm learning from others.
Nice.
I'm directed.
Self-directed. I love that. Someone tweet that so I can retweet it. Or
oh, it's funny.
Really good.
Another comment before you go. I love your content, Stewart, from Ed. So I guess we'll end on that note. Again, thank you, Stewart, for being here. Everyone who's been watching, and those who have stuck by us for almost 2 hours. We'd like to thank you for being here. Definitely not the length we wanted to go, but it just so happens that it did. And my job will be to edit it down for those who listen to this on one of the podcast apps. Hopefully it'll be a lot shorter than 2 hours. So my job is the fun part of editing it down, so you get the gist of what we're trying to get out there. Again, next week we have a junior dev. In 2 weeks, our next show, we have a junior dev as our guest. They will be talking about what their current journey is, what they're working on, how they're trying to improve. And we want to keep our guests from different backgrounds and varieties. Our next guest is a single mom. She's juggling a job plus learning. And right there alone, I know what that struggle's like, not with the kid, but with 2 jobs, trying to learn something and change careers. So, she's a very interesting person. And when I first met her, she was very quiet, she didn't say a lot. And now I think she's out of her shell and she's comfortable enough to get on the show and talk, even though she said she's going to let me talk, but lo and behold, Anna's going to be the one interviewing her. So, but I think that you should get a lot out of it. So even when we don't have people who have names, or they may have a YouTube channel, I think you should hopefully get something out of the guests we have. Everything happens. You learn from everyone, and I feel like just because this is a junior dev, that there isn't something you can't learn, or what is she doing. And I really would like her to talk about how she juggles work and being a mom and learning at the same time. And I give her assignments and she completes them, and it's great. So again, we appreciate it, and I'll let Anna speak her little outro, and then I'm gonna go ahead and close it.
I was just gonna say we all learn from everyone, and sometimes we also learn from our past selves, as Stewart said earlier, from your
On
past
Google.
YouTube videos on Google. So no, just wanted to say thank you so much to you, Stewart. Thank you, Craig, for being the best. Oh my gosh, I bumped the microphone. Thank you, Craig, and yeah, thank you everyone for listening. I will see you in 2 weeks.
That's gonna be our new closing. You learn from other people, but you also learn from yourself through Google.
Yes.
It's gonna be the outro for every episode from now on. Anyways, thank you very much, and I'm gonna go ahead and end this now. Yes, Ed, we're gonna make you wait 2 weeks. Hopefully, we'll get on a weekly schedule, but we want to see, I guess, more people interested in it, and so bi-weekly is easier for us for now. But the more support and the more people that start to follow us, we will change if we need to. But thank you again, and it's been a pleasure. So I'm going to go ahead and finish.